In this video, we'll show you how to design responsively in WeWeb. We'll start with a desktop design and make it responsive on tablet and mobile. The first thing to know about designing responsively in WeWeb is that WeWeb is desktop first. So if you're in desktop mode, like we are here, if you make a change on to a setting, so let's say, for example, we make the size of the text bigger, we change it to 40 or even more, this change will also affect tablet mode. We still have 62 pixels in mobile mode. So this is not ideal. Let's go back and revert back to our initial state. Now, what if we went on tablet mode? Let's change the size of call to traffic here in tablet mode. Let's change it to 50. So now, if I go back to desktop, I still have 32 pixels. I have my little visual cue here, which tells me that there's a different style for tablet. And if I go to mobile, I also have the 50 pixels that I have on tablet. Now that doesn't look very good either, so let's go ahead and make it smaller. Let's make it maybe 20. So now we have 20 pixels on tablet, 32 on desktop, and 20 on mobile. What if we wanted to make it even smaller on mobile, have it at 16? Now we have a visual cue that shows us we have different CSS properties on tablet and mobile. If we go back to tablet, 20 pixels. If we go back to desktop, 32 pixels. Now, if we go on these visual cues and press on the red cross, let's delete those, then we're back to 32 on tablet and 32 on mobile. You can see which screen sizes will be affected right here. So you can play around if you want and look at how it looks like on various screens. You will see that the screen sizes change here. However, the breakpoint is this. It will only affect the breakpoint when you change the styling here will only affect screens with a width of 767 pixels and below. On tablet, it will affect screens with a width of 991 pixels and below. So you can play around with this to preview your design, but the breakpoints will not change. So here affects all screen sizes, and you see we've gone back to desktop. Something that's very important to keep in mind when designing responsively in WeWeb is that if you need to hide an element on mobile, for example, let's say we did not want this download report button on mobile. We would go into our mobile mode here, mobile editing mode. We would select the download report on the page, and we would make sure that we're selecting exactly the element we want to hide. So maybe we would want to hide the entire container or maybe just the button. In this case, we'll hide only the button. And what we'll do is in the styling properties, we'll go ahead and look for the display property and switch it to off. So now we see this little icon, the I barred out, that crossed out, that says that it's not displayed. This is not displayed on mobile. We have our little visual cue. But if we went on tablet, we see the button okay, and same on desktop. This is a standard web development best practice. You shouldn't be deleting the element from your HTML tree. You should be hiding it. So in CSS, it would be display none. In WeWeb, it's display off. Okay, let's go ahead and start fixing our design to fit on tablet. So here we're on tablet. It affects the screens with a width of 991 pixels and below. And we might feel like this is a little bit congested, right? The columns are a little bit strange. So what we'll do is here we'll select the columns, And we'll go ahead and display them as rows instead. So now instead of displaying in columns on tablet, we will display rows. And we see that on desktop, it's fine. We're still displaying columns. On tablet, we now have rows, but actually we would like this information here to go to the top because it's kind of our navigation here. So what we can do is we can go ahead and click on reverse order here. Now our column 2 is actually row 1 and column 1 is actually row 2, but we're not going to rename them because WeWeb is mainly to design web apps, so desktop first. So we'll leave our naming convention to fit where we'll be designing most of the time. Okay, back to our tablet. Here we're in the image on the card. So we can see in the HTML tree that we have selected the image. And what we could do is we could potentially change the fixed height for the tablet. That would be our first thought. So here we would go ahead and say, well, I only want, let's say, 200 pixels. But it kind of messes the ratio of our image. Instead, what we're going to do is we're going to add a div and add the image as a background image for that div with a fixed height of 100 pixels and rename the div image for mobile. So let's go ahead and add a div. Here we go. This image, we will hide it. We will say display none or display off. And here on our div, which is for mobile, we will go ahead and add a background image. And we select the same background. And now on the div, we will select a fixed height of 100 pixels. What we will do is that on desktop, we will hide it, because otherwise we'll have it twice. So we'll hide it on desktop, and we should have it available now on mobile and tablet. And now what we could do is we could play around with the position. To show what we want to show. So to show the part of the image that we want to show. Now on our column 1, what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of margin, a margin top, because right now it's completely stuck here. So let's go ahead and add some margin top. Well, just the top one, 24 pixels. And we will remove the padding that we have on the right here, which makes it not aligned very well with here. Here we see, for example, that in our column 2, we have padding on the left that looks a little bit weird. And in our column 1, we have padding on the right that now looks a little bit weird. So we'll get rid of this on tablet. So let me select column 2. Here I have this padding that I don't want anymore. And column 1, I have a little bit of padding on the right, which I do not want anymore. All right, so now it's nice and aligned on the left and on the right. And you see that on desktop, I still have, everything looks nice. I still have my little padding right here and my little padding left. So we're all good on desktop. Now the table element, we actually don't need to touch it. It is responsive by default. So by default, you'll have a little scroll here, a horizontal scroll. And that's one of the values of using our built-in table element instead of building one yourself with flex boxes and whatnot. we've made this responsible by design with a horizontal scroll. Now that our tablet design looks nice, let's move to mobile. The first thing we notice is that there's a lot of space at the top and the left and the right. So let's change that. Let's select our content section and reduce the padding a little bit. Let's change it to 24 and 24 top. So that looks a bit more balanced. We're not wasting as much space for mobile. The second thing we notice is that this here looks a little bit tight. Let's have a look at our header section. We see here that our boxes are kind of spilling out. The reason for that is that our header is in horizontal direction. What we'll do is we'll ask this container, the parent container header, to move vertically. And that way, the children elements, the left and right, will take up the space inside the header and won't spill out. On our little button here, we will add a little bit of top margin. Let's see here. Give it a bit of breathing room. If we keep scrolling down, we see that here it's a little bit strange. It's a bit strange because the text here is huge, so it's taking up almost all the box. So what we could do is we could reduce the padding a little bit. Let's say 12. And what we might want to do is this overview here, we want to make it vertical as well. So then we can add a row gap and also justify it to the left to move the sidebar to the left. Now let's look at our history block. So if we scroll down, we see that our table is responsive. It has a horizontal scroll, but it's not really practical. I would prefer to have the 4 columns all, on one screen without scrolling. So I need to go ahead and investigate what's going on. And if I look at my headers, so I'll start at the beginning. Let's start on the table. I see my width is 100%, and I don't have any padding or margins that are messing up my design. So let's go ahead on the header. And here what I see is I have a width that's affecting tablets, so it's also affecting mobile. Let me get rid of this. Now, great, I have my headers, the 4 headers in the same place. But I still have the lines. I need to scroll to see them. So let me go at the collection list level, and I see I have that same width. That's a fixed width. That's 1200 pixels. So it's 1200 pixels here, but I'm below the 1200 pixels on mobile. So let me actually get rid of it because I don't want it for tablet either. And now I have my 4 values as well that correspond to the 4 columns. Let me still get rid of some padding that's a bit too much for mobile. So let me select the flex boxes. All right, and instead of having 16 pixel padding, I will change it to 8. And let me do it on the flex boxes of my line. I could have done all 8 at the same time. Let's do it like that. Okay, it's better, but still, this text is spilling out. So I might want to make this text smaller. Let's change it to 12. Okay, that looks nice. Maybe I don't even need any padding. Do you have it here? Yeah, I do have it here, so I will leave it there. Okay, here I can change it to 12 as well. Do that. And let's get rid of this icon, which I don't need. And here I'll just modify the placeholder because I'm actually going to be displaying duration, so I don't need that. All right, and now this text I also want to make smaller. I can't see the text size because it has an undefined typography, so it must be linked to a typography, but I don't know which one. So I'm just gonna get rid of them, get rid of that, and do the same as for the others and switch it to 12 pixels. And now this looks much nicer. What I might do is I might hide this icon here. I'll hide it on mobile. And there we go. In summary, there are 4 things to keep in mind that will help you most of the time design responsively. Number 1 is you can play around with the size of text or the width or height of images. The second is that when you don't want to display an item on mobile or tablet, but you still want to display on desktop, you'll want to use the display property to hide it on mobile and tablet, but still keep it in desktop instead of deleting the element from the HTML tree, which would delete it on all devices, no matter what screen size. The third thing to remember is you can play around with paddings and margins, so reduce the spacing a little bit on tablet or mobile to give more room for the text without having to reduce the text size. And finally, on tablet and mobile, very often, if you have a flex box with a horizontal direction on desktop, you will need to move that and change that to vertical direction on tablet or mobile to make it look nice. And you might need to reverse the order of containers inside a parent element. That's it. That's how you design responsively in WeWeb. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. It's okay. You play around with things and you'll work it out, I'm sure.